IVM.
Hello and welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories, India's very own travel podcast, where each week we share the journey of travelers in their own words and relive their experiences with you, our listeners.
Hey guys, welcome to a brand new episode of the Musafir Stories. On the podcast today, we speak with Keshave Chaturvedi, the host of the podcast Tede Mede Raste, as he takes us on a wonderful temple trail across North Karnataka. Let's hop onto the episode and find out more. So with that introduction, we'd love to welcome Keshave Chaturvedi, a journalist, a photographer, and recently turned podcaster as well. Keshav, thank you so much for being a part of the Musafir Stories and welcome.
Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Keshav. And like I was saying, really glad to be talking to, I know I said journalist, photographer, but at the heart, you're also a traveler, and that is now reflected through your podcast, which is Tede Mede Raste, also hosted on IVM. So really glad to be speaking to a fellow podcaster on the episode today. But Keshav, why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself and the podcast as well? A really unique take on travel, and we hugely appreciate the podcast too, given the format, given the style in which you weave these stories around different places, and it's in Hindi, so that's also something we look forward to. So please tell us a little bit more about Tede Mede Raste.
Sure. Though I have been very reticent about talking about myself as well as my program, but yes, to the new listener, I would like to say that Tede Mede Raste is a concept that was building inside me for the last 20 years. It's just a culmination of the travels that I have done between 1995 to 2019. So I have put all the incidents, all the stories, all my ideas, the photographs that I clicked, I gathered them, and then I tried to weave a story between these experiences as well as the visuals that I had gathered. The idea that I had was that people are more interested in listening to the stories behind the scene that have unfolded, as well as a podcaster needs to not just give information which are available on the website. There are dime a dozen. They have to tell them a story and also what they felt when they were there. And you can do only when you are immersing yourself into that place. So the idea that developed over a period of time was to have an immersive experience that you can share with the listener. And because it's a one-dimensional thing that I have to do, which is a voice, I don't have the visuals. I don't have that luxury of showing you the visuals. So the challenge was to create a picture in words and create a particular emotion which is very relevant to that place. So it was a challenge and I kept thinking over it. Then I started writing scripts, and then one day I got in touch with IVM, and then rest, as they say, is history.
Indeed. And like you mentioned, definitely a picture is worth 1,000 words, and that's what Keshav's episodes weave beautifully around a place, around an experience. It's very immersive, and like I said, in his free-flowing Hindi as well, which is the icing on top of the cake. So we'll make sure to link it in the show notes, and do make sure to check out Keshav's podcast as well. But today, Keshav is in the hot seat. He's not going to be speaking, he's definitely going to be speaking about the place, but I'll be asking him a few questions as well about his experience visiting this place. So, Keshav, where are you taking us and the listeners to today?
Today, we'll be going to North Karnataka, 3 places, Badami, Pattadakal, and Aihole. These are 3 places which are very intricately interwoven with each other. Their history they have a shared history. They have a shared past. They were ruled by the same rulers. They suffered the same fate. They are all the part of our heritage. So we'll be talking about them.
Wonderful. Really, really looking forward to this. And also walked down the memory lane as well for me. It's been a few years since I visited these places. And yes, returned to the home state. That's where Karnataka is where I come from as well. So really looking forward to this and looking forward to listening to your experience about your trip here. But tell us a little bit more. I know you told us this is in North Karnataka, but just in terms of getting there, etc. How did you get here, and what are some ways people can get to these places?
My journey is a very almost a magical journey. It was December and we were traveling down south. I was a part of a team that was trying to figure out how history and geography has shaped the mindset of Indians in various parts. So we were traveling down south, all the 4 states, and we started from Andhra Pradesh, went to Tamil Nadu, then to Kerala, and after that we entered to in Mangalore, and we were crossing Karnataka. In that we reached Hubballi, and people told us that if you are in Hubballi, you should visit these 3 places: Badami, Aihole, and Pattadakal. And till that time, I hadn't heard about all the 3 places. As a true blue North Indian, I was blissfully unaware of what was happening beyond Vindhyas. So we said, okay, we can take a look, and we went there. So a person coming from a place which is Indo-Gangetic plain, so you have a flat land for as long as your eyes can see. Here, North Karnataka, it's a plateau and it has its own sandstone hills and all that. First, the landscape came as a huge jolt to me. So by that time, I had covered a lot of Karnataka, but Badami just stood out. And because I was there in December, and we entered in Badami, which was around evening time, sun was setting, and the sandstones they came into their own. They were either yellow or red. I thank God that I entered in that place at that moment. So that memory and that image is etched in my memory. So that is how I reached Badami. And then we stayed there that night. And from next day onward, we started exploring the place.
Yeah, definitely. And to somebody also trying to get here, there is, like Keshav mentioned, Hubballi is one of the bigger cities in the vicinity. There's also now, I think, an international airport in Hubballi as well. But it's very well connected via road, and there's also trains that you could use to get to these. I actually drove into these as a part of a road trip as well, and especially if you're doing the area around Hampi, it's not too far. It's a little bit of a drive, but again, these 3 places, Badami, Aihole, and Pattadakal, are pretty much within, say, 10 to 20 kilometers between the 3 places, right? So definitely can be covered off together. And also just quick call out for the time of the year you visited, right? December is definitely, the winters are definitely a good time, especially these days, like Karnataka, parts of Karnataka can be pretty hot as well during the summer, so perhaps plan your trips to either be in December or even in the monsoons. But I'm sure it's like some parts are pretty green, so you could, if you're avoiding summers, any other time of the year should be good enough. But like Keshav mentioned, winters are a great time to visit there. So wonderful. Now that we have set some context around this, that this is situated in the northern part of Karnataka, in the, technically speaking, the Bagalkot district. That's where these places fall in, all these places. You briefly mentioned, right, the highlight of these places is obviously the rich history, the heritage, the shared culture with the rulers as well. So can you also give us and the listeners a quick peek into the rulers and the dynasty basically that was ruling Karnataka at this point in time, and a little bit about their background as well, Keshav?
Sure. So Badami, Aihole, and Pattadakal developed between 4th century to 12th century. And most of the time they were under Chalukya rules. Chalukya rulers were there, and they developed these 3 places. And Badami was their political capital. Aihole was their spiritual capital, and Pattadakal was where they would coronate their kings. So all the three places in a span of say 35 kilometers, it's a kind of a triangle which you can travel. Aihole and Pattadakal are close by. Badami is at a slight distance. So that is how it stands. So Chalukyas were the one who developed the entire area over a period of time. The earlier Chalukyas, then there is a small brief interregnum when Delhi Sultanate started attacking, and there was a decline, and then they come back and stay there till 12th century. After 12th century, the place is sacked.
Thank you. Thanks so much for calling that out. And like you mentioned, it's the Chalukyas or the Badami Chalukyas, basically, right?
Yeah, Badami
the Chalukyas. I think there's 2 or 3 branches, and this is basically the Badami Chalukyas initially, earlier on in the 4th, 5th century that they started out. And then later on again, they were known as the Kalyani Chalukyas that came back much later. Now that we have called out a little bit about the background of the people who ruled this place and were also key and elemental in constructing a lot of these temples during this time, let's jump into the itinerary and start off with, you said you visited Badami first, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, let's start off with Badami and tell us about your experience a little bit, and also what are the different things you saw around there, and what Badami is famous for.
So Badami has 4 caves that people know of, and they are most popular tourist destinations. So I was staying in that city. When in the morning we got up, we saw that 2 great rocks or hills. They were like towering over the city, and they were built in a manner where they make an escarpment. Escarpment is like there is a sheer cliff, and then features are carved in that cliff. So as a geography student, I was fascinated to see escarpment up close and personal. Otherwise, I had just read about them in my geomorphology classes. So we reached there, and there are 4 caves. 3 of the caves are dedicated to Hindu gods, Shiva and Vishnu. And the 4th cave at the top is dedicated to Jain, Tirthankars. The great thing about Vishnu temple was that they had a Vishnu statue which is sitting. Mostly when you find Vishnu on a Sheshnag, the imagery is that the god is reclining. God is reclining because recline always shows that he is in complete, total control. He is laid back. His control is absolute. So like Roman emperors who would also recline in a manner, telling the people that they are in total control, Vishnu is always depicted like that. But in that temple, there is a statue where Vishnu, instead of reclining on Sheshnag, is sitting upright, absolutely. So it may have some connotation. Chalukyas must have created Vishnu in their own image, or the other way around, something of this sort. Historians and archaeologists have not been able to pinpoint exactly what propelled them to make that, but it actually comes out as something very unique in that temple.
Yeah, definitely. And also, while we jump into the specifics of these temples and the cave temples, right? Would you also like to call out a little bit in terms of the folklore associated with the place as well? Because Badami also in the past has been referred to as Vatapi, right?
Yeah.
So would you like to touch upon that as well, Keshav?
Yeah, absolutely. So there is a story that this area, this whole valley was cursed by 2 demons. And these demons had created this ingenious style of luring people and then eating them, that one of them would become a lamb and the other one would stay as a human. The moment people would come, they would say, okay, stay with me, and I'll prepare you this lamb, and you can then partake food, and tomorrow morning you can go. So the people would be very happy, and they would stay back with him. He would prepare a lamb, which was already was his brother, the other demon, and then they would feed the person. or the family or the entire caravan they would feed in. And this demon would go inside their stomach, reassemble himself, and then break their tummy and come out of it. And then they would eat all the people and take whatever they were carrying. So when Agastya Muni, who was also passing this area, stayed back, and they started to play the same trick with him. But he, with his spiritual powers, saw through the game. And when Vatapi was fed to him, this one demon was fed to him, he ate it, and with his own spiritual powers, he completely consumed him within. The other demon, when realized this, he just ran away. So that's how this Agastya Muni gave the entire valley, and they liberated the entire valley from the clutches of these two demons. So this is a very prevalent myth in that area.
Yeah, definitely. And Vatapi and Ilvala, I believe, is the second demon.
Yes.
That you're referring to. And like I mentioned earlier as well, Badami was previously known as Vatapi also. So there's those references, and there's also a huge lake in the vicinity. It's called as the Agastya Lake. So that also perhaps draws reference from this episode, right? From Agastya Muni. So yeah, I think stories like these also add that extra bit of layer to the place, to the history of the place as well, right? We know the people, we know the history, the temples, etc. But folklore actually adds a lot of things as well to it. So really good to find out more about that. Now, sorry I interjected. You were speaking about the cave temples there. How's your experience going through these cave temples? Because these are very unique, right? I know perhaps when you say rock-cut cave temples, we relate to the ones at Ellora, Ajanta and places like these. But these are very unique, given that, like you mentioned, yellow to red sandstone almost. So very finely carved and sculpted figures as well within these temples. And even within those temples, there's subtle differences between the different temples. So how was your experience going through these temples, and any sculptures and temples that stood out for you?
Yeah, the 4 caves, they are actually the soul of Badami. There's no doubt about that. So in one cave, you have a whole narration of Shiva. So Shiva in all his forms. Then Vishnu again in all his forms, in Vara form and the other form that I told you. And similarly is the case with Jain Tirthankars. But what really made me realize in this place was that this was the political capital. Political capital has 4 main temples. It also has a kund which is called Agastya Kund. Again, there is a temple which is Bhutnath temple. There are near Bhutnath temple, new caves have been discovered. And in that there is again there is one very peculiar sculpture which has no face, or face has been disfigured. That face has been disfigured, but its imagery is a combination of Buddhist imagery, Jain imagery, as well as Hindu imagery. Now, there is a controversy whether the creator is trying to show you Vishnu or Gautam Buddha when he was a prince, or Mahavir when he was a prince. So finally, all the academics are veering around this the corner that it may be they are depicting king as a reincarnation of all the 3. So they are trying to figure that out. But what also made me realize, and it was kind of it came as a shock or whatever, that kings must have had built palaces, but there was not a sign of any palace. So how come you have a political capital where kings have lived for 800 years and there's not even a single palace there? And that was a mystery people didn't have any answer, and I couldn't find any answer to.
Yeah, I think that's a very important call out as well. I know we easily get mesmerized and lost within the cave and the cave temples as well, but yes, to your point, there's no remnants of huge like palaces or fortifications. So obviously these are much older, right? Given it's 4th, 5th century CE, so much older than, say, relatively newer. The Vijayanagara Empire has at least these quarters and palace-like or structures around the temples as well. But yeah, that is quite unique now that you call it out, that there's literally no remnants of any sort of palaces or quarters where the kings and their clans lived. And also to your point, that 5th cave, right? It's usually referred to as Cave 5 or the controversial cave. That also is very, very different and perhaps a little recent also compared to the other caves. To your point, the other caves, right? Usually they're referred to by these numbers, right? Cave 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3,
That's
4.
how they're referred to. And the cave 1 is primarily Shiva, and I guess Shiva in his Tandava form or the Tandava dance. That's the key sculpture in that cave. And in cave 2, it's the Vishnu in the Varaha form as well as in the Trivikrama form. Those are
form,
the two popular or iconic sculptures within that cave temple. And cave 3 again has a mix of both, right? And it's also Harihar, like they say, Shiv and Vishnu combined, those sculptures. And there's the bigger of the caves. And finally the Jain cave, right? The Jaina cave is also very interesting, given that it has all these different Tirthankars and their sculptures carved out within. So it appears distinct from the other 3 caves, which are more Hindu gods or Hindu sculptures within them. So subtle differences. Again, if you happen to visit, definitely make sure to look up these different things. So when you visit them, you can kind of see for them. Otherwise, it'll all appear as sculptures to you. But very, very finely carved and sculpted because of the nature of the sandstone as well. A lot of detail. And some of the caves also have, I guess, in the ceilings, murals that you could see too. So that's also pretty unique to these caves. How much time did you spend here, Keshav?
I was there for 2 days.
Okay. Yeah, definitely worth it. I mean, again, if you're there for a day, you could perhaps cover off, but it'll be more of a touch and go type of an experience. But if you want to break it up and extend it over a couple of days, you have enough time to actually go through these. And there's very decent literature available as well if you want to read up more about the different caves and the different sculptures within the caves as well. The couple of other call outs in the vicinity, I'd just like to mention as well as we pass through Badami is obviously the Agastya Lake, right, or Agastya Kund, like you mentioned. That's also very scenic, and especially when you're on top, right, from one of the caves and looking down upon the Bhutnath temple along with the Agastya Kund. It's a magnificent sight, right, almost greenish waters of the pond plus the Bhutnath temple at its banks. It's a really majestic sight. And I guess the influence of the later on the Bijapur Sultanate is also shown in a little mosque that's there as well. I forget the name. It's probably called the Juma Markaz or something on those lines. But that mosque also is something at the entrance that you probably won't miss out as you're approaching the caves. So a lot of things to check out in the vicinity. So easily 1 to 2 days can be spent at Badami. Did you cover off or check off anything else at Badami before we could move on to the next place, Keshav?
I didn't see, but I was told, and I can believe it, that a better time to visit Badami, and as I had already traveled in that area in December, they said come during monsoons. Why? Because from monsoon, up from that height of Badami escarpment, there is a waterfall that is created, which comes and joins this Agastya Kund. So it makes the place even more scenic. So those who can't go in December or January, they should try to catch that place in monsoons. And the other thing is that again, a new place has been found in that area. I was told about that place because the excavations were going on at that time, but I haven't visited that place, where they have unearthed Hindu deities and features and inscriptions, where the inscriptions are made in Devanagari script. Now, that Devanagari script was used in 11th century, just a few years or a few decades before the final decline of Chalukya Empire. So, I think that is something that I missed because I came to know about it later. And maybe next time I go, I'll visit that place.
Yeah, definitely. I think very interesting things to call out, and it'll be a little different as well, right? Because it's not the usual temples, but a lot of these old inscriptions that are far and few between. The one other call out about Badami, if you're visiting, Badami is also very popular for bouldering. Right, these sandstone cliffs, they're very popular, not just locally, but also a lot of international climbers come down here for what they call as the free sport climbing or bouldering. A lot of popularity has been gained in the past few years as well with this kind of adventure sport. But yeah, winters or monsoons, like Keshav mentioned, is a good time to come here and probably see two different experiences also between the place. Summers can get really hot, like I said, so try avoiding summers, but definitely otherwise around the year you can always make a stop and see the different shades given by the season as well. Wonderful. Having spent some time at Badami, can we now jump on to your Aihole and Pattadakal part of the itinerary?
Sure.
Cool. Where do we want to start off with? Did you stop off at Aihole first, or was it Pattadakal?
Aihole.
Okay, wonderful. So tell us a little bit more about that. I know it's very different from what you saw at Badami, but share with us a little bit more about what are the things you saw there.
So we first landed at the Ravanpadi cave. The first thing I saw there, and I was like, wow, what a place to be. And it was a daytime, but there was something about that place that was very enchanting. Aihole in its entirety is so beautiful that in that place I realized that I should have been here for a longer period of time, because there are in all 100 such places, 100 temples. All of them have their own little history and everything. Then mainly 4 temples are in the caves. There are 16 big temples like Durga temple and all that. I wanted to stay there for a longer period of time, but I couldn't. So whatever little I saw, I had to then pick and choose. I went to that Ravanpadi cave, and then I came to this Durga temple, and also Lad Khan temple, which is also called, which had its other name. But then, yes, these are the 3 places I saw. Okay. I have this abiding regret that I should have stayed there for 2 more days.
Yeah, definitely. And like you mentioned, there's several actually temples in Aihole, right? And between Aihole and Pattadakal, even though they're just like very close by, perhaps a couple kilometers apart, but they have this very unique fusion of both North Indian style and South Indian style, or basically the Nagara and the Dravida style of temples. That's very unique to the area. A few of these you called out, right? Obviously the Durga temple, or the Durg temple, like they say, is very popular. There is actually, even though one might think that this is named after goddess Durga, it's a little bit of a misnomer. And what I understand is, it's basically there used to be a fort, or a durg, as they say, for the fort. And that's why it used to be referred to as the Durga temple. But yeah, it's very different and unique from the other temples in the area as well. So definitely make it a point. And the other one, Lad Khan temple, right? That also, given the name, it obviously surprises you. It has a Muslim name, but what type of temple is it? Lad Khan was, I think, one of the general or the chieftain of the later Bijapur Sultanate, right? Yep. They kind of ruled it at later years, and that's how it got its name. But its original name, I believe, is the Chalukya Shiva temple, as it's referred to.
Yeah, it is.
So, yeah, that's also very unique. And all of these, like, it's almost like a complex, right, Keshav? A lot of small temples in the vicinity. So you can easily take like a half a day to just go around just temples in the complex. I'm not even talking about the Ravan Pahadi and the others that are like maybe a few meters or maybe a kilometer or so off. There's just so many different temples in the complex, and like I said, each one with its unique style, so easily one can spend time there. One other thing people can do is, I don't know if you had a chance, is there's a museum as well in that complex.
Yeah, there is a museum.
Yeah, that's also something one can visit just to learn a little bit more about the different architectural style as well as the different sculptures as well, right? So if you want to do a little bit of a deep dive into that, do make sure to stop by at the museum, a little stepwell in the vicinity too. But from what I was reading, like a lot of these areas, there was several encroachments as like recently as the 80s and the 90s, and then later on is when ASI actually took over the place, and given that it is a part of the UNESCO sites as well, right, between Pattadakal and here, that's when like a lot of redevelopment, if I could say that, right, just reclaiming a lot of these lands from the encroachments that was done. Otherwise it could have easily been lost, right, given how old they are, could have easily been lost to encroachment. So if you get a chance, definitely do make sure you spend time here. Very, very different from what you've seen at Badami. But quickly jumping on from Aihole to Pattadakal, right? Keshav, how much time did you spend here? And also tell us a little bit more about, you mentioned at the beginning that this place was popular for the coronation and also the spiritual capital of the Chalukyas, right? So tell us a little bit more about that.
Okay, so spiritual capital was Aihole, and before going to Pattadakal, I would like to add something about Durga Temple. Durga Temple complex is something, again, the exact date is lost to antiquity, but the experts always say that it is built between 8th to 11th century, somewhere around that. The beauty of that temple is that it has all the three elements of Shaivism, Vaishnavism, Shaktism, and you have Vara and Narsimha, all of them. The temple also has the frescoes and sculptures related to normal life, and again, amorous couples and the couple making love and the sexual positions and all that. Something which you find in Konark, something that you also find in Khajuraho. And somehow temples around that time, 1000 years ago, they show you the same thing. And the idea is to tell the people that this is the life on the outer skin of the temple. They show you that this is how a daily life of a human being in his physical form is. And the moment you start going deeper into the temple, you are going deeper into yourself. And the moment you reach Garbhagriha is your final spiritual point where you surrender yourself. The interesting thing is that today's North Indian temples, if you come to Delhi or you go to any place in the temples today, show the same sign of Durga temple. They will have one Shiv Murti, one Ram and Krishna, and one Vishnu, and also a Devi. So 1000, after jumping 1000 years, that this style is still in vogue, and that too in the North Indian region. So that is an interesting thing that I found. But when the moment I reached Pattadakal came across as a nursery. The moment you enter, all sorts of architecture, that temple architecture that is available today or was in vogue at any point of time in last 1500 years, they are visible in that small 1 by 1 kilometer nursery, maybe a little smaller nursery. You have all the architecture available there. That was a very fascinating study of temple architecture there. So I stayed there for 2.5 hours. and it was almost evening, late evening, but I stayed there, and it was a great experience.
Yeah, wonderful. And especially that call out about the Durga temple and how you can relate to, I think, just the overall understanding as well, right? About the outer surface to how you go deeper into spirituality. That also is interesting to find out and learn. Yes, I really like this analogy of equating this to almost a nursery of temples, right? That's how it is. Like so many different temples and architectures, all in a very small or a confined space. That's a great way of looking at it as well. Now that you have spent some time here at Aihole, tell us about how you found Pattadakal in comparison.
Pattadakal is something as compared to Aihole. I would say that Aihole had a lot of character, and you felt that you are in a former city. It still has a soul which is attracting you. It's spread over a place, and there is life all around. There were kids who were playing in those ruins. So the place had a kind of it still had a lot of charge. Pattadakal felt very antiseptic. It was very formal. The moment I entered there, I felt that yes, I am in a place which is very no nonsense. It's very regal, but it's very sanitized environment. It's a place to study something. So your whole attitude shifted, that you ought to come here as a student of architecture. You can't just loiter around. So that's a great shift I felt when I was in Pattadakal. Because it does not leave you with anything else. There is no distraction for you. There is no high relief or there is any other architectural feature or any physical feature. There is no river going besides it. So it's just a very, very saturated emotion and a very saturated experience in a very tight confines. So Pattadakal, that is why held out as a very, very unique experience in my mind.
Yeah, definitely. And also, just wanted to go back to the point that you mentioned that this is also the place of coronation, right?
Yeah, it was.
In its name also somewhere, it does deliver that meaning that this is where the kings were coronated as well. Do you want to add a little bit of background? Also, this place also has some fine folklore associated to them, to Lord Parshuram.
Yes.
Why don't you share that, Keshav?
So Parshuram, it was said that Parshuram was really very crossed with the Kshatriyas at one point of time. He thought that they have left the path of their nobility. So he destroyed all the Kshatriyas from the face of earth. After he completed his killing spree, so he came to this place, Pattadakal, and cleaned his weapon in Malprabha river. And that is why they say that the color of the soil here has turned red. And when I was there was a boy who told me, "Sir, you should go to the place near Malprabha river. You'll find that there is Parashuram's Parsa is still found there." So I went to that place, and there is a rock. It is cut in a manner, or it is naturally built in a manner that it looks something close to a parsa, or a kind of a small dagger. So I thought, okay, it's good. So these are the stories which make the place slightly more, enchanting. This was it. And about Pattadakal, one more thing is, the moment a king was to be coronated, it was incumbent on him to make a small temple there, a token temple in that area. That is why they would build a temple with a unique architecture. They would always feel that they felt that it should not repeat the earlier.
Not an imitation. Right?
It shouldn't be an imitation of the previous architecture. That is how, in that small area, you saw so many kind of architectural innovations were performed, and each one was completely different from the other.
Yeah, definitely. And several temples in and around this area as well. Like you said, every time there was a coronation, there was a new temple built. A lot of these as well, right? Similar to the previous temples, are a fusion of all styles of architecture. So North Indian, South Indian, or Dravida style of architecture is also found in these places. The largest being the Virupaksha temple, right? That is, I believe, functioning temple. So there's still prayers offered there, and the sitting deity is offered prayers there as well. So that way it's important. But a lot of other temples as well. I think they're also called by different names. So you can go visit the Kada Siddheshwara temple, Jambulingeshwara temple, Galaganatha temple. So there's a lot of different temples in the vicinity. Some of them small, not huge temples that one might expect to see, but others, right, the Virupaksha temple are much bigger in size as well. So it's a mix of both smaller and bigger temples in the area. So if you're here, you could easily spend like half a day to perhaps more than that. If you're like a student of history and architecture, there's so much more to unearth and explore in this complex too. So definitely make sure that you check out these different things. Any other unique experiences in the area, Keshav, related to Pattadakal specifically?
Yeah, in Pattadakal, I saw a small temple, very small temple, which was called Chandrasekhara temple. And just one look at it, and I kept thinking where I have seen this. Because this style is now out of vogue. And this was made here, and I was told that wherever in India, Nepal, or in Myanmar, you see temple architecture, it will have its root here in Pattadakal. And after seeing Chandrasekhar temple, I kept thinking where I have seen an extended version of it. And suddenly I remembered, okay, Halebidu and Belur are the two functioning temple even today, which resembles complete Chandrasekhar temple. I was also enchanted to see Kashi Vishwanath temple there. So Kashi Vishwanath temple, the origin of the Kashi Vishwanath temple in Varanasi, which is being rebuilt today. So you realize that a part of it was built here also. So these are the two things that stood out in my mind, and I thought that, okay, this is what makes this place so great, that people either were copying the or were borrowing from whatever was happening all around India, or they were building their own, which was being copied in other parts of India. In whatever way, Pattadakal will be considered as a great source of temple architecture.
100%. Also, I guess one of the reasons was also that during this period, that when they were built, there was relative sense of political stability around the country as well, right?
Yes,
country at that time, but like the Gupta Empire was in a period of pretty much political stability. So that gave kings to actually spend and invest in a lot of temples, architecture, and other things that usually relate to affluence of the era. So that also shows off in this time. But I think overall as well, it extended for quite some time, right? From the 4th, 5th century towards, like you said, the 11th, 12th century as well. It happened in waves as well. There was perhaps Rashtrakutas in between, but the Chalukyas for the most part. So that helped kind of build upon a lot of the work that had been done initially in the 4th and 5th century by the Chalukyas. But yeah, thank you so much for taking us almost on this temple trail of sorts, right? I know usually if you go to a place, it's a mix of several different things, but one thing stands out, and here it's primarily the temples and temples of different kinds, rock cut to these complexes, to the fusion of the northern style and the southern style of temples. So for somebody who's a lover of history and architecture and art, this is dreamland of sorts, right? There's
Absolutely,
so much to offer.
absolutely. It is. And you should visit it in December or December, January, or in monsoons. The grandeur of this land will just stun you, but the history will stay with you forever.
Yeah, absolutely. You put that really brilliantly. And also make sure, I know Keshav and I didn't have a chance to actually explore the cuisines of North Karnataka and the region as much, but the North Karnataka cuisine is also very, very unique, very different to, say, the southern Karnataka or the Bangalore and areas around, right? Things like the Jolad Roti and your Khanavalis. These are the restaurants, and also the influence of Maharashtra that shows in the cuisine. So while you're in the area, definitely make sure to check all of these things out as you're going on your temple trails and temple runs, and you're getting hungry. Definitely make sure to try out some of the local cuisines of the area.
Yeah, and as I have a sweet tooth, I can say that I tried their basundi, which is an North Indian equivalent of rabdi, and it's every bit as tasty, if not more. So if people don't have a sweet tooth, even then they should try.
Thank you so much, Keshav, for taking us around. And literally, right, like you say, a picture is worth 1,000 words, but you have shown us so much deeper with your beautiful words, and also taking me back and like rolling back the years for me as well. It's been a good 5-6 years since I visited the place. So really happy to have this virtual trip down the memory lane and relive some of my experiences visiting Badami, Chalukyas, and Aihole. Before we let you go, Keshav, why don't you share with us and our listeners how they can keep in touch with you and your podcast?
I'm available on Facebook. I'm also available on Instagram, Keshave Chaturvedi 9. My podcast is Tedhe Mede Raste on IVM Podcasts. And if you are a lover of Hindi, or if you understand Hindi, and you want to listen anything about India in Hindi, then that's the place to go.
Absolutely. We'll make sure to link the podcast as well as Keshav's social media handles in the show notes as well, so you can go give it a listen. And don't forget to share the podcast with your friends as well. And like Keshav signs off in his podcast, share it with your friends, because घूमने का मजा साथ चलने में ही है, right, Keshav?
Absolutely.
Thank you so much, Keshav. Looking forward to staying in touch and following your other wonderful stories on Tedhe Mede Raste.
Thank you so much.
That was yet another great episode on the Musafir Stories. Make sure to show us some love by sharing the podcast with your friends and family. We are on Instagram and Twitter at Musafir Stories. If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM podcast app or the website. Follow us on our social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram.